The Boys is still the boys. This week saw not only episode 4 of Daredevil, episode 6 of Invincible, then episodes 1 and 2 of the Darth Maul show that I'm not watching, but I'm sure a lot of you guys are, but also the first 2 episodes of Invincible hit Amazon Prime. I want to talk about them. I think they're very interesting. There's a lot of good. There's a lot of maybe not so good. It's always been kind of the charm of this show is it does a lot of things. Also, I'm not on camera for this one because I am in the middle of moving and the office is a mess. I'll say at the top, overall thoughts on this series is that it's fun. They do a great job of setting up what I think are really interesting confrontations and giving these characters really interesting character moments. But I also think this show does some of the dumbest things I've ever seen done on TV, and I enjoy that about it. I like its kind of weird quest to one-up itself, in terms of things being silly, in terms of things being disgusting, but also, I think it does speak to what is interesting about this show, and what I think is something that almost none of the rest of these can do. I know this sounds basic, but as we go, I think it'll make more sense. The idea of what would a superhero be like in the real world is a question that a lot of comics and movies have tried to get at. You've got things like Watchmen, the book and the show. You have movies like The Dark Knight, the original X-Men movies that try to play it a little bit more seriously. You got things like Kick-Ass, Mystery Men, The Specials, Super. This is something that has been done. However, what I think they're almost all missing, not necessarily every single one, but a lot of those last ones that I just mentioned, is this scope, is the grandness that comes with the medium of comic book stories, right? They are big, they are exciting, they're dynamic. It is a medium where you can draw anything. You're limited by your imagination. So when you try to make it more realistic, and what you do is you take that source material and try to take things away from it to make it make more sense, I think that always comes off as missing something, right? You're losing something about what makes the medium special. Now that we're 5 seasons into it and 2 seasons of Gen V and also that diabolical cartoon, after all that, I feel pretty confident saying that I think The Boys is the best attempt to take the premise of superheroes and comic book characters in the real world and doing everything with it. I also think, and I've said this before, this has always been my opinion on The Boys, it gets the most improved prize when it comes to adaptations, because the Boys comics, while interesting and definitely unique for their time, are nowhere near as, and I know this is gonna sound crazy, but deep as this show is. Yes, it's clearly a silly show where a guy in a spandex suit does laser beams to people and stuff, and where there's a lot of weird sex stuff that is largely for shock value. But at the same time, the comic has very little interest in exploring the politics, the corporate dynamics, the ethics of superheroism in a real world. All of that comes from the show. I would say, if you're watching The Boys, then whatever. Go read one issue of the comic. Doesn't matter which one, but read it. And you can compare that to how that specific character or arc is handled within the show, but also just get a sense for the tone, what this book is. Because neither the book or the show are subtle, but the difference is the book isn't trying to say or do anything really that interesting. So I appreciate 5 seasons in, that The Boys is still doing that The Boys is still evolving. Because what is so special about this show is that it is not just an adaptation of the source material, it is a question. What would these guys be like in the real world? And the real world has changed a lot since this show started. The first season of The Boys aired in 2019. And honestly, it seems like it's been longer, but that is 7 years. And in 7 years, the media landscape has changed so much, the political landscape has changed so much, technology, attitudes towards things like corporations and celebrities. That really has changed. And I think if I can give The Boys one real compliment, it is that it has adapted to that incredibly well. And I think you see that all on display in these first 2 episodes. I'm going to skip forward a little bit because I think the best example of it comes from The Preacher. So you get a new character in the season named O-Father, played by Daveed Diggs, in a really great looking muscle suit. And he is a preacher or minister or whatever you call him, who is also a superhero who has maybe sonic boom powers or maybe some sort of suggestion-based powers. It's unclear. Maybe it's like a vocal kind of makes you feel good. And I feel like that's the way that the people in the crowd are kind of taking it in. But anyway, that character replaced another character from way earlier in the series. And not replaced him like the actor left. The character was killed in the course of the show, and this guy took over. The original character, I believe, was called Ezekiel, and he was just a priest with Mr. Fantastic powers, who was taking advantage of his position and using religion to get one over on people. A very simple idea. But as far as the actual melding of the religion and the politics were concerned, it was a little bit there. but it was not as there as it is now. Also, and this is something that I think was so great, "Oh Father" is not just saying that the bad people are evil and God wants us to fix them. It is a speech about specifically how people have been taken over by demons, literal demons, and they're running the world, which has existed for a while as a religious philosophy, but it is way more prevalent now. And I like that The Boys has embraced that extreme along with the real world. I think what The Boys does really well, I think it puts out really interesting performances. It's done a really good job of growing these characters very organically over the course of time, because what they are building off of is a comic that does not really do that much character development. So they have a lot of leeway to say, you know what, I think Huey's going to do this season instead of that. And if it is justified by where the character is and what the performer wants to do, it makes perfect sense. They put it in. So it's great at that. I think the other thing it's great at is parodying media specifically. And sometimes it goes right in. Sometimes after the Imagine video happens in real life and everyone makes fun of it, they do their own Imagine video. Sometimes after Kendall Jenner does her silly Pepsi commercial, A-Train does his own silly soda commercial. And I think it's really important that episode 1 of season 5 starts with the shareholders meeting, because that is like the most important thing in the show. Sure, Homelander wants to take over the world and the boys want to kill all the supes, but in reality, the company Vought is what is in charge of everything, and the shareholders are the main antagonist of this show. Something that I was kind of interested in, I was kind of surprised by, I forgot that they have really never changed any of the main characters' costumes, outside of specific things where like A-Train tries to get a little bit more political, or Starlight goes back to her original costume after getting her new like sexy costume. But like Homelander has had the exact same Homelander suit since the beginning. Then on one hand, I think that's cool. I like that they're not going out of their way to like reinvent everything. On the other hand, I think it would be kind of fun to see the Homelander costume evolve with Homelander. Like become maybe more military, become darker, or become lighter because of the image he's trying to present. It could be anything, but I am surprised that they don't do that in this show. So Starlight gets in a fight, Black Noir. Black Noir, interesting this season. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of theories about what's going on with him. That is somewhat informed by the book, and before I saw these first 2 episodes, I did not buy it, that was what was going on. But now I'm a little bit more like, hey, maybe they kind of did figure out a way to do it, and I think that's really clever. We'll get to it as it goes. But Starlight ambushes Homelander by putting out the video from the airplane, which shows that Homelander is a bad guy and did kill all those people. And it's fascinating because you see Homelander in this moment get scared. Like there is fear on his face and all of the people around him are confused and scared of him, but Sage is able to hold him back. And that's the big difference between what Homelander's been doing before and what Homelander's doing now. Homelander actually has someone who he seems to listen to, at least for now, pulling the strings. And that is why he's been able to ascend so high. Then we get into some of the deep fake stuff, which makes sense because that's everywhere these days. And that is what they would use to explain a lot of this away. But also, and it's genius, I feel like, what the Teenage Kicks kids do. Because that really is how you break things like this in the real world. You take something that people cannot even imagine that feels so terrible, and you turn it into something that feels familiar and silly. So hey, even if Homelander did do that, whatever, or the kids are dancing about it, it's not that big of a deal. I think every so often the boys hits on something culturally that nobody is really hitting on, and that moment in this episode was the one for me. You also see that Ashley is the vice president now and she can read minds. Love that Chris Hayes gets to be in this show. I hope he enjoys it. I hope he's a fan. And we see that Homelander and Sage are working together. Sister Sage is getting kind of comfortable with her new life because she's not perfect. She's not a god. She still has human wants and needs, and one of them is to get things and to own things and to feel like she has control, because this character didn't seem to really have that before. But owning a Gutenberg Bible is as good of a sign as she can get. And obviously, Anthony Starr, amazing in this series. Everybody, I think, is giving it 100%. But Anthony Starr, I feel like what we get from him that's so interesting in here is a huge mix of like a person who is genuinely scary and someone who is at his most insecure. This is the most insecure this character has ever been because he has so much on the line and because he knows, like characters will say, he's not happy. He's never going to be happy. At least not by trying to fill the void by getting more power and hurting more people. And I think what this show does a lot of the time is tries to deliberately hit certain points, touch certain nerves that are happening in culture. And this idea of a very powerful political figure who decides to get retribution because of memes, That's pretty much really happening. Like, I think Donald Trump is really bad for this show and really good for this show. Really good because I think he has forced the show and the writers of the show to get really creative. Like, he's not just like any politician. He is something unusual. And because of that, I think Homelander has become more extreme, and the show has more license to do things with Homelander that in a world where there was no Trump and it was just Obama and then maybe, I don't know, Ted Cruz or something, would seem kind of silly. But because of Trump, totally makes sense. Then we check in on the concentration camp. Honestly, not much of this stuff really interested me this episode. I'm always interested in what Jack Quaid is doing because I think he's great on the show. Everybody on the show, like I said, is great. But this is just one of those situations in the show. I think I've always had this problem where the supes are just doing the most interesting thing almost every time. I want to see more of them. And I'm, interested in the arc of MM, and I like that we get like a break from superhero stuff and we see more of these consequences. But at the same time, when I think of my favorite moments from this episode, it's all the superhero stuff. And maybe this is one of those situations where, yeah, that is what you remember, but you're only able to remember that because of how good the rest of the balance is, right? Like, the healers don't get play of the game, but maybe they should. We're back to Love Sausage, another character that I will not show in the video, obviously, but he's a superhero with the prehensile penis, which is so bizarre. That's one that I believe comes directly from the books. Most of the characters here do, but some of them I feel like could only come from the books, and if they didn't come from the books, they would be kind of one-offs, but because this is a character that people are expecting, the writers have a lot of ideas for what to do with them. And then we get Butcher. We haven't seen Butcher yet this episode. He goes and talks to his dad, basically lays out everything that's been going on with him up until this point, and makes peace with who he is. And because of that, Billy isn't holding back anymore, and that's what's going to make him so dangerous this season. And one of the things he's always wanted to do was kill his old dad. And it's funny because Butcher is going through a different version of the Venom arc, where now all of his worst impulses are in charge, and that is why him having the tendrils makes sense. Love the idea that everybody is terrified of Homelander. Because again, all these fascist regimes, they are built on the idea that the strong man may turn on the person at any point. And sometimes that gives them maybe the power to do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do, but a lot of other times that just means they don't trust anybody. I do think one thing that maybe I didn't love about these first couple episodes is how many things from last season have been kind of taken back, how many things we have to do again. Like, we get it here, the idea that Firecracker has stopped using the hormone to produce milk because it was going to kill her. It feels like maybe that was a plot line that the writers weren't really that interested in. Like, something they did that was fun, but it was like, we don't really want to have that be the show. And partially it's to alienate Homelander a little bit more. But there were a couple of other things where characters reunited and had like a small fight. And I'm like, I thought we did this already. Or other things happened off screen that I'm like, it's weird that we didn't see that. Not that I think we need to, because I like the speed this show is going at. This show needs a comic. That's what the boys needs. And they're so good at making supplementary material with like little videos that go online, like a Firecracker segment on YouTube. Then I'm almost bummed that there is no in-universe comic that just explains some of the things that we don't see. Now, we check on Kimiko. She is in Manila, and it turns out she talks now because she decided to learn how to talk. Because might as well, it's been a year. I feel like this character would at least try to kind of learn how to communicate with other people. I'm surprised the language that she did try to learn was not Tagalog, and maybe she already did learn that because she's in the Philippines, or French, because that is presumably the language Frenchie knows the best, and she's the person he's trying to get back to. But hey, she knows that the show is primarily in English, so she might as well learn it too. I think it's cute that she learned English from TikTok. I feel like that's how a lot of people learn English these days, and a lot of languages. So then we get some deep. Even though not every deep joke works for me, I have an infinite amount of tolerance and enjoyment that I get from just watching him. I watched the full podcast that they released on YouTube. I just think Chase Crawford is really funny, and I think what they've been doing with him, with creating this character who is close to Homelander, characters like A-Train are making the right decision, characters like the Deep are making the wrong decision every single time, and getting into further and further trouble. Okay, so let's talk about Black Noir. Black Noir in this series never spoke. That was a different version of Black Noir. But then, that version of Black Noir was killed and replaced with a guy who has superpowers, but can speak. And he would speak when people weren't watching, right? Everybody in the Seven knew he was a different guy and knew he could speak. But because the public character of Black Noir had been silent, it would have been weird if he just started talking then. But one thing that they've been doing this season is Black Noir does not talk anymore. He's full method, and he also doesn't take off the suit anymore. There was a thing in the comics that I feel like is the big spoiler of the comics, but I'm sure you've heard it by now. Spoiler alert 3, 2, 1. That in the end of the books, it is revealed that Black Noir is secretly a clone of Homelander who has been doing a lot of the terrible things that Homelander gets blamed for. So specifically, like, what Homelander did to Becca, Butcher's wife, that's something that actually Black Noir Homelander did. Now, obviously, because we knew that the actor playing this character, and the character itself, because he took off his mask, was black, can't have been him, right? That wasn't what we were doing. But now we're at a point where it's like, could someone have replaced that character with a clone of Homelander? Who knows? He needs to be close to everybody. He needs to be close to the action. But people cannot suspect that he is Homelander. I don't know. This would have to be something that is not a secret to Homelander, because Homelander has X-ray vision and all kinds of other super senses that he is constantly using and spying on people. So, like, Homelander would know that this is not the Black Noir he thought it was. But then it's like, why would Homelander keep that a secret? And if that was that important of a secret, the show would probably start doing that thing where there would be certain characters that would be like, something's up, but we don't know what's happening. Who is it that keeps, leaving these messages or leaking these secrets? And we'd be like, oh, that's who it is. I do think if maybe there's a way that the show is playing this, that could be what Sage is up to. Maybe Sage has created a clone of Homelander that she can use, like, control somehow. Because she seems like a character that would do that. The bigger question, though, is how would she hide that from Homelander? Because even if you could encase it in zinc or whatever it is that he can't see through, the fact that he can't see through it would be enough of a giveaway to him that something's up. So the fact that Homelander does not appear to be in on it makes me assume that it's not that big of a twist, but the show is clearly up to something. Then we reunite Kimiko, Annie, and Billy. Kimiko can speak, she's mean and sometimes says the wrong thing, and that's going to be the joke with her this season. Fine. I'm glad Karen Fuhara gets to speak. She has a nice voice, and it's probably something where she's probably pretty comfortable doing the sign language now, but, like, this is a different kind of acting, and it's probably a nice change of pace. So here's where my main question about the episode comes from. This is a question I've seen a couple people ask, but I'm interested in if you guys have any good answers for it. The team is really concerned with breaking out the guys because Homelander, wants to get them. Homelander wants to get Butcher. So he sets this trap, says he's going to execute them. And the Supes are like, we need to rescue them now. But the specific reason they cite is we need Frenchie. Frenchie is the only person that can distribute this virus that we're going to need to kill all the Supes. And they say this a couple of times. This seems to exist mostly to create tension between Annie and Huey, where when Annie decides to say Frenchie instead of Huey, that is clear that, she has changed, and Huey's a little upset with that, but then he gets over it. I understand that. But what we will learn later is they have the scientist who made this virus. He still works for them. What can Frenchie do that he cannot? And I understand we want to have two people, just in case something happens to him. But they say that Frenchie's the only person that can do this, as if this other guy just doesn't exist. And I'm really not sure what's going on here. I love that Homelander now has Soldier Boy in his room. That's very fun. And then we get our first look at Ashley and Father together. They are in a relationship, which is interesting. What we will see Ashley do in her arc over the first two episodes is that she can kind of read minds, but also her own mind is talking to her. And it's unclear what that is, until we learn that she's got a head on the back of her head. She's a Malignant. Everybody remembers that movie, Malignant. And she even, I think, compares it to a tumor, so it's that. But I think Ashley has always been a character who has felt like she needs to make these compromises, but doesn't want to do this, has felt uncomfortable in this world. And I like that now she is pushed to the edge, she can't really do this anymore. But she also knows she's in too deep. And a lot of these characters, the deep, in too deep. Okay, that's clever. A lot of these characters will end up there. But I think Ashley is the character who vocalizes it the most because she's the only character in the show that has an internal monologue. Then we get the introduction of this episode's new weird soup, because almost every first episode or second episode, the premieres, have at least one soup that is doing something that is very disgusting that we've never seen before, or at least they usually do. This episode, we have a soup called Worm, who I'm just going to check because I haven't done this yet. I kind of figure, and I'm going to say this now and maybe I'll be wrong, but I kind of figure that this character is being played by one of the writers of the show. I don't know that for a fact, but it just feels like the kind of thing that's so heavy-handed and so obvious, that he is a writer for a television show who is going to be talking about how difficult it is to write a television show. And also, I think if I were the writer of this show, I would be like, listen, I'm going to write some gross stuff, but I'm going to be one of them. Eventually, you're going to have me on TV doing something gross, so that's my way of having skin in the game. Turns out that's not the case. This character is played by an actor named Eli Henry, who I feel like I've seen in stuff, but I'm not able to place. Oh, he was in For All Mankind. Sure, I like that show. Oh, he was in Miss Davis. I like that show a lot. I do think it's just really funny when they kind of started setting up this character, I was like, oh, is this, we're not going to do a, oh my god, it is. Now, most people didn't watch the Artemis Fowl movie. However, a lot of people probably saw that one clip of Josh Gad's character unhinging his jaw and digging a big hole and pooping out all the dirt. That is almost exactly what this character does, except he doesn't unhinge his jaw, and you see his butt when he's doing it. I would say that is the grosser version of it, is seeing his butt. But, I don't know, it's not that far off from what Disney put in a kid's movie, which just goes to show you that movie stinks. Some details that I like. I think I would kind of be annoyed by the fact that the characters are only talking about or watching Amazon shows, but I do kind of appreciate that that is all they talk about here. So like he is writing a Reacher spec script. He is a spec script for The Wheel of Time or some sort of X-rated Rings of Power. Looks like a movie version of The Expanse. I don't know, I think it's kind of funny. Also, Reacher, massive, enters the motel. Beautiful. And then we get the return of A-Train. This is a big A-Train episode. Spoiler alert for people who probably have seen this or seen the show, but I've also seen this on YouTube and stuff. He dies in this episode. So this is Jesse T. Usher's one big episode. And I think, overall, perfect. On one hand, he suffers from the curse of being too useful. And this is something that happens with all speedsters. If they can time in a bottle something, if they can stop time and fix everything, then there needs to be some reason why they can't be around for the finale. Otherwise, they would do that. A lot of the times, it's because the villain manages to catch them and break their leg or something. But here, it's going to be done with a beautiful character moment and a great start to the season. A great explanation of the themes and like what these characters are going to be dealing with over the course of the next however many episodes this season is. Also, I want to point this out, and I don't think I've ever said this before, but something I really like about The Boys is the sound design. I'm going to play a clip. Just the sound, and then over nothing. Just a black screen. And you tell me, like, what is that? What's happening on screen? Yeah, exactly. That's A-Train's running sound. It has always been that. It is something that I've never heard another speedster use. Like, it seems to be created specifically for the show, and it really sticks around. You know, the show does that a lot. Here's another one. That's the Starlight sound. You know, not every hero gets their own sound because not everyone has a power that would create one. Homelander has like a laser vision sound, but it isn't that exciting. And I do think you see a couple more of these on Gen V, but these two specifically, I'm just like reminded watching this episode how well the sound on this series is designed. And then the boys try to break out, but it turns out, and you would never believe it, Homelander has been watching them and has seen all the stuff they're doing and killed all their guys because that's just what he does. And he tries to intimidate Huey, which I think doesn't work, which is interesting, because by this point, like, Huey knows who he is. He knows Homelander is not going to kill him, because if he was going to, he would have by now. And he knows if he can get Homelander to kill him in this moment, that will mess up whatever Homelander's doing, and that will be good for the cause. So I love that Huey is one of the few characters who just genuinely does not seem that scared of Homelander when Homelander is trying to scare them. Like, obviously he's scared of being laser beamed to death, but he's not like intimidated by him because he understands and the other characters will understand. That's really all he's got. And then you see Homelander directly addressing the conflict of this season and of the series in general, which is how can someone who doesn't have superpowers be more valuable, more important, more beloved than someone with them? And like, what is Homelander missing? Why is Huey Homelander's arch nemesis and not Billy? And it's because they're the opposite of each other. Like A-Train will say, Homelander is the empty suit, all powers, no substance. Huey is all substance, no powers. And as Homelander has become more hollow over the course of the series, and that's become more obvious, same is true for Huey. He's grown more, has more substance, and now he doesn't have any of those superpowers that he had for a couple of episodes. I do remember there being like consequences to that. I don't remember if there's ever an explanation for like why he doesn't have them anymore, because I thought they like destroyed your body even if you had them for a little bit, but I guess not. Made a little farewell to A-Train's family, and then the Deep shows up riding a hammerhead shark like it's a jet ski. Again, he's amazing, very funny. You know, I think seeing the Deep, seeing how scared he is of Homelander only helps to solidify to A-Train how right his choice was and how all Homelander's really got is fear. Then the worm guy does his worm thing, which obviously we're not going to show. Funny looking. I like his hoodie. I like that it references another super from way back in the day. And the boys is great at that. And then they crawl through the tunnel. Now, I am not, or at least I did not know, I was claustrophobic. I don't think I am fully, but like, man, this looks uncomfortable. Just this one really tight shot of Butcher crawling through a tunnel that is just a little bit wider than him. So upsetting. Then Homelander is there, and they fight Homelander a little bit. Anthony Starr does an amazing job with this mother's milk line. I just love it so much.
You never told me that this one's nickname is Mother's Milk.
Like, I like that Homelander is a character who isn't not self-aware, right? He knows that everybody thinks it's weird that he drinks breast milk, or just milk generally. But he also thinks it's funny that this guy's name is MM, and he wants to throw that back at the group a little bit. Make a joke at their expense. Again, demonstrate some power. Kimiko gets lasered in half. This is something I had almost forgotten about, although I did kind of remember. When we were watching it, Hannah fully did not remember this. I don't blame her, because it doesn't come up that often. That Kimiko is like the best version of Wolverine that ever was. Meaning like she can fully regenerate no matter what. It's a very simple power, but it makes sense why you would put someone like that on this team, so that you could do stuff like this to them. We get a bunch of fights. Great line read from MM here.
I'm gonna chop that thing up like a party sub.
Then they kill Love Sausage. Great. He's tired of that character. And I think we see in this moment, and this is what I think is interesting during this time in a bottle moment, what Homelander is trying to do is mess with Billy Butcher. And Homelander's big misunderstanding about this show, one of his big misunderstandings about the show, is he really does think Billy Butcher is his nemesis, is his opposite. And he's just not. And Homelander doesn't really get that, because he doesn't understand what Huey is. So he is willing to kill Huey to mess with Butcher, even though in reality, he should kind of be doing the opposite. He should try to kill Butcher to mess with Huey, because breaking Huey and showing that, like, Huey is just a guy like the rest of them who'll do bad things if he's pushed. That's what Homelander needs as a character, but he's not going to get it because he just doesn't understand this. Then we get the time in a bottle moment, which looks great, and is followed by the classic Flash v Superman race fight, which really goes to show like how dangerous Homelander is, and it is easy to forget this. Like, he could fly at super speed. Everything A-Train could do, he can also do while flying. And I think it's interesting that A-Train in this situation is still like, I gotta run away from this guy. Partially because running away gives them a little bit more like time to get away. And also partially because maybe he thought this would work. I would imagine the single strategy you could pull off is go somewhere crowded and let Homelander catch you. And then pretend like what happened was good. Like, stop in the middle of a crowded place where everybody's got their cell phones, Homelander grabs you, and then you say like, all right, Homelander, you got me. Wow, it is good to be back from that secret mission though. Give me a hug, you give him a hug, and then he can't kill you. I'm not saying that's what you should have done. I'm just saying, I wonder if he had a strategy, and if he did, I'd have to imagine it was something like that. You know, and then we get this very poetic moment of A-Train not killing another Robin, sacrificing himself to do that. And also, we're reminded that like, while these supes are somewhat invulnerable and like extra durable, they're not fully invulnerable. He's not like Cannonball. He's not nigh invulnerable when he's blasting. He is quite vulnerable. And this scene is great. Obviously, everything here is excellent. I like Anthony Starr's delivery here, because he's not mad at A-Train for betraying him. He knew A-Train was betraying him, and he was kind of ready with that. He's at this point, it feels like, kind of sad that he has to kill A-Train, because A-Train was one of his guys, and seeing A-Train dead, it means like less of what Homelander liked about himself in the olden days when the Seven was working and everything was great. Like, another piece of that is gone. Like, it doesn't feel like he's gloating when he says,
Looks like someone can catch the A-Train after all.
It really feels like he reads that line as a friend, trying to see him as an equal, because Homelander wants equals. He wants people that understand him. And in this moment, he's like, you and me, we were always good at being fast, and we were heroes, and I'm just like you, and I'm gonna kill you, but you did your best. You know, and then we get A-Train dying, getting choked, and neck broken, while he's telling Homelander that Homelander stinks, which is, I would say, maybe not the core idea of this season, but it is very clearly stating Homelander's big problem, the chip on his shoulder, why he feels so alone, and why he feels the need to be more and more powerful is because he knows deep down like he's really not. And when he does think he has a peer, someone he kind of respects, and he finds out that person doesn't take him seriously at all, it really gets to him. You know, I think we're going to see more and more of that over this season. Homelander's going to become more and more desperate, and that is ultimately going to destroy him. Another thing I like about this scene is that Homelander doesn't seem like he wants to kill A-Train. I believe if Homelander wanted to kill A-Train, he could. Easily. He could laser beam his head off. I don't think it would be that hard for him to choke A-Train. Yes, A-Train does seem like one of the more powerful supes, and because of that, he would maybe be more durable, but he's very beat up now. Homelander's at full power, has him by the throat. And that's how I kind of choose to read this scene. Homelander isn't killing A-Train. He's just trying to show A-Train, like, look at how powerful I am. Look at how much power I have over you. So that maybe A-Train will say, oh, I'm so sorry, don't kill me. You're right, you are the best. And it isn't until Homelander figures out, like, he's never going to get that from A-Train, that he decides to actually kill him. Because the thing that is eventually, I'm sure, going to destroy this character is he just cannot take a joke. None of these fascists can, because of how flimsy their whole personality is. And I like that A-Train gets to go out laughing. And then we get the rare, I don't even think The Boys has ever done this before, maybe once or twice, the rare, no music or anything, just sad credits where everything is quiet because of how serious this is, which is interesting. Oh yeah, watching it back, this reminded me, I don't know why everyone's being so cavalier when they're trying to escape the prison. Like, yes, most of the guards are dead, and yes, the supes that would fight them are either, like, fully out of commission, or don't seem like they're getting back into this fight. But, like, you know, run. Don't have conversations in there. Homelander could come back and just laser you all in half if he wants to. And, like, in some instances in this episode, they are very smart, you know, trying to blind Homelander, using that against him. Genius. No one's tried that. Or maybe not no one's tried that, but, like, that is a vulnerability of Homelander's that Annie can exploit. Especially for someone with supervision. Potentially, it's worse for Homelander, but it's bad for everybody. But on the other side, like, they're very tactical with that, and then they're not very tactical with, like, taking their time getting out of the prison. That's episode 1. I forgot this episode is called 15 Inches of Sheer Dynamite. Of course it is. You know, as far as kind of restating what this season is about, reorienting all of our characters, figuring out what the status quo was, because I remember at the end of last season going, like, he's in charge. He's not president, somebody else isn't president, but, like, what's going on here? And, like, I was hopeful that they would do this, where they would really clearly go, that's the president, this is the vice president, this is what Homelander's kind of able to do, this is how he's using his propaganda network to do it. Like, I appreciate that. Yeah, overall, just real solid. I'll do another video for episode 2, because I do feel like there was more here to cover than I expected. But, you know, speaking of strange superpowers, you know, fantastical sci-fi takes on real life, it reminds me of a video I watched recently by a creator I really enjoy watching called Captain Midnight, and he has a new series called Showrunners. In it, takes a person who is responsible for creating some sort of iconic piece of television and looks at their life, looks at how it led to the creation of this series, what values they brought into it, what the political climate was. At least that's what the first episode is, because that's the only one that's out so far. And it's about Rod Serling, the creator of the Twilight Zone. And the Twilight Zone, honestly, is one of the most influential pieces of media from the last century. Eric Kripke, the showrunner of The Boys, apparently, for his senior year at college in USC, he made a movie based on a story from the Twilight Zone magazine that he read when he was 13 and decided, like, this story was important to him. So without the Twilight Zone, without Twilight Zone magazine, which I assume mostly came from the existence of the Twilight Zone, no The Boys, or at least not The Boys the way that it is, not the clever, interesting Boys. Maybe we get the kind of dopey version of The Boys that's closer to what it is in the comics. So, I don't know, I found that interesting. Anyway, if you want to watch that video about Rod Serling, all my videos are early and ad-free, tons of other exclusive videos, I would check out this video's sponsor, Nebula. Nebula is, say it with me, a subscription streaming service that I and a bunch of other really cool people helped create. Nebula has evolved so much over the last 7 years. Sure, you can still watch all my videos early and ad-free. You can watch videos by a bunch of other creators you probably already love. But one of the most exciting things about Nebula is our original programming. Tom Scott has a new series called England, where he goes to every English county to find something interesting. You should check out this first episode where Tom Scott goes to Leicestershire and he visits a bell making factory. You see the entire process, learn how bells are made, and it is not how you would expect, especially since this bell making factory is hundreds of years old and they're still working with some of the same techniques from a century ago. Tom Scott even gets to use a sledgehammer to break one of the bells a little, because shockingly, it's hard to do. It's hard to use a sledgehammer to break an enormous bell. And each episode of England is going to be on Nebula for a week before it goes anywhere else. On top of that, we got a series that I love watching called Abolish Everything, where someone, maybe a comedian, maybe another YouTuber, makes an argument for something that should be abolished. They state their case, they make a very funny PowerPoint, the political establishment gets to weigh in, and then the audience decides what deserves to actually be abolished. This week they did the championship for the second season. They had a ton of really funny people on it. I've never been on that show, maybe sometime in the future. I think I'd be a fun abolitionist. And then later this year, although hopefully not too much later, Nebula's first original dramatic scripted series. Subliminal comes out with the episode that I wrote, which I cannot wait for you guys to watch. Nebula is the best way to support all of the creators you already love and all the creators you don't know you're going to love, but then you're going to love them when you see them on Nebula. You can also download the videos to your phone, which saves you data when you're not at home. And there are not AI videos on Nebula. So this isn't going to be like YouTube where you go on and you watch a video in a minute or two and you're like, something's off here. And then you realize like, oh, this video is AI. Which happens on YouTube and other platforms way more than I would like to admit. Nebula, we all got real stuff made by real creators, and that's why it's great. And a year of Nebula is already a steal at $60 a year, $5 a month. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, you can get a year of Nebula for just $30. That is $2.50 a month. It is an amazing deal. Again, go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut to check it out. That's all I got. Stay safe. I will see you next time.